Well, hello there, Globetrotters. It is Thursday. Who's ready for Chapter 2? I'm ready for Chapter 2, so we're starting. Chapter 2 is called Mr. Willy Wonka's Factory. In the evenings, after he had finished his supper of watery cabbage soup, Charlie always went into the room of his 4 grandparents to listen to their stories. And then afterwards, he'd say goodnight. Every one of these old people was over 90. They were as shriveled up as little prunes, and they were as bony as skeletons, and throughout the day, until Charlie made his appearance, they just lay huddled in their bed, 2 at this end and 2 at the other end, with their nightcaps on to keep their heads warm, dozing the time away with nothing to do. But as soon as they heard the door opening, and they heard Charlie's voice saying, "Good evening, Grandpa Joe, Grandma Josephine, Grandma George, Grandma Georgina," then all 4 of them would suddenly sit up, and their old wrinkly faces would light up with smiles of pleasure, and the talking would begin. For they loved this little boy. He was the only bright thing in their lives, and his evening visits were something that they looked forward to all day long. Often Charlie's mother and father would come in as well, and they'd stand by the door, and they'd listen to the stories that the old people told. And thus, for perhaps maybe a half an hour every night, this room would become a happy place, and the whole family would forget that it was hungry and poor. One evening, when Charlie went in to see his grandparents, he said to him, "Is it really true that Wonka's chocolate factory is the biggest one in the world?" "True?" cried out all 4 of them at once. "Of course it's true. Good heavens, don't you know that? It's about 50 times as big as any other. And is Mr. Willy Wonka really the cleverest chocolate maker in the whole world?" "Ugh, my dear boy," said Grandpa Joe, raising himself up a little higher in his pillow. "Mr. Willy Wonka is the most amazing, the most fantastic, the most extraordinary chocolate maker in the whole entire world. I thought everybody knew that." "I mean, I knew he was famous, Grandpa Joe, and I knew he was very clever." "Clever!" cried the old man. "He's more than that. He's a magician with chocolate. He can make anything he wants. Isn't that a fact, my dears?" And the 3 other old people nodded their heads very slowly up and down. And they said, "Absolutely true, just as true as can be." And then Grandpa Joe said, "You mean to say that I've never told you about Mr. Willy Wonka and his factory?" "Never," answered little Charlie. "Good heavens above, I don't know what's the matter with me. I mean, will you tell me now, Grandpa Joe? Please?" "I certainly will. Sit down beside me on the bed, my dear boy, and listen carefully." Grandpa Joe was the oldest of the 4 grandparents. He was 96 and a half, and that's just about as old as anybody can be. Like all extremely old people, he was very delicate and weak, and throughout the day he spoke very little, but in the evenings when Charlie, his beloved grandson, was in the room, he seemed in some marvelous way to grow quite young again, and all of his tiredness fell away from him, and he became as eager and excited as a young boy. "Oh, what a man he is, this Mr. Willy Wonka," said Grandpa Joe. "Did you know, for example, that he has himself invented more than 200 new kinds of candy bars, each with a different center, each far sweeter and creamier and more delicious than anything that any other chocolate factories can make?" "Oh, it's perfectly true," said Grandma Josephine, "and he sends them to all the 4 corners of the earth. Isn't that so, Grandpa Joe?" "Oh, it is, my dear, it is. And to all the kings and the presidents of the world as well. But it isn't only candy bars that he makes. Oh, dear me, no. He has some really fantastic inventions up his sleeve, Mr. Willy Wonka has. Did you know that he's invented a way of making chocolate ice cream so that it stays cold for hours and hours without even being in the freezer? You can even leave it lying in the sun all morning long on a hot day and it won't go runny." "But that's impossible," said little Charlie, staring at his grandfather. "Of course it's impossible," cried Grandpa Joe. "It's completely absurd, but Mr. Willy Wonka's done it." "Quite right," said the others, nodding their heads. "Mr. Wonka has done it." And then again Grandpa Joe went on, speaking very slowly now so that Charlie wouldn't miss a word. "Mr. Willy Wonka can make marshmallows that taste like violets, and rich caramels that change color every 10 seconds as you suck on them, and little feathery sweets that melt away deliciously the moment you put them between your lips. He can make chewing gum that never loses its taste, and candy balloons that you can blow up to enormous sizes before you pop them with a pen and gobble them up. And by a most secret method, he can make lovely bluebird's eggs with black spots on them. And when you put one of those in your mouth, it gradually gets smaller and smaller until suddenly there's nothing left except a tiny little pink sugary baby bird sitting on the tip of your tongue. Grandpa Joe paused, and he ran the point of his tongue slowly over his lips. "It makes my mouth water just thinking about it," he said. "Oh, mine too," said little Charlie, but please go on." While they were talking, Mr. and Mrs. Bucket, Charlie's mother and father, had come quietly into the room, and now both were standing just inside the door listening. "Tell Charlie about that crazy Indian prince," said Grandma Josephine. "He'd like to hear that." "You mean Prince Pondicherry?" said Grandpa Joe. He began chuckling with laughter. "Completely dotty," said Grandpa George. "Oh, but very rich," said Grandma Georgina. "Oh, what did he do?" asked Charlie eagerly. "Listen," said Grandpa Joe, "and I'll tell you." That's chapter 2. Chapter 3 is coming tomorrow. Hope you're having a good day. Hope everything is super exciting and fun. Or if it's kind of boring like it is here, I hope you're having a good day at least. We miss you. We wish we could see you every day, but we'll keep posting stuff. Talk to you later. Bye.